Australia, the sixth largest country on Earth. An ancient, rugged, and unforgiving land with abundant animal life, both beautiful and deadly. Found within its awe-inspiring landscapes and natural beauty exists a deep history of unexplained mysteries for anyone with the courage to investigate them. Tonight, we join Ben on a journey across this vast island continent in search of answers to events that have reshaped the lives of so many that have been exposed to Unexplained Phenomena Australia, with your host, Ben Hurl.
Hi, and welcome to episode 8 of Unexplained Phenomena Australia. I am your host, Ben Hurl, and tonight we have a really intriguing encounter to revisit. This particular case only came to my attention fairly recently, and even though it occurred on the 21st of May 1971, the encounter appealed to me for several key reasons. It has a principal witness whose experience was supported by up to 5 or maybe more additional witnesses who also saw the object or something at the same time and on the same date. The witness is a businessman and long-term local resident of the town where the encounter occurred. And it's entirely credible, and in recounting his experience to me this week, it's quite clear that despite the 50-odd years that have passed since it occurred, it still burns in his memory. The object was described well in the sighting, even though it was only seen for a fairly brief period of time. But it was at fairly close range, not miles up in the sky by any means. Additionally, there was also animal effects in this case, and that always adds an interesting dimension to any UFO encounter when animals are affected by the presence of a strange object. The object was seen over a wide area across the entire district, so that reinforces the witness's testimony and solidifies the fact that something was there that morning in late fall, because May in Australia is autumn or fall. And this case was lost to time, as many cases we have already discussed on this show have been as well. And it came to my attention when I was digging through old newspaper clippings that I had in boxes here at my house. And I was looking for interesting reports that I could load up onto my UFO Vic Facebook page when I came across some old photocopies of about 5 articles that had appeared in the Warwick Nabil, it's an interesting name, Warwick Nabil Herald. And these articles started on the 28th of May and ran on various dates through until the 22nd of June, 1971. Now, Warwick Nabil is in Western Victoria, the state that I'm in, the Wimmera region. And it's a region that's had many, many UFO reports. And I'm just going to show you now, so you can get an idea where it is. So that's where it is. Where that little red drop down is where Warwick Nabil is. So it's up heading towards the northwest of the state. Take that off again. So many reports have come out of that area, and it's not that far away from Burke's Flat, which we spoke about last week, or West Turif, which is the Jolly family farm, which I spoke about on some episodes previously. So Warwick Nabil is basically in the middle of that. So I'm going to show you another image here. So Warwick Nabil is the center red dot there. And to the north of that, where it says up near Patchy Wallock and between Hopeton, that's where the Jolly family farm was located. And if you look down to the below where Warwick Nabil is, just to the right of St Arnaud, that's where the Burke's Flat encounter was. So Warwick Nabil is actually really right in that same area where those other really, really strong cases had occurred. So I was really, really interested to see that. Now, I read those news reports with great interest, and then posted them into my UFO Vic Facebook page. And Westall researcher Shane Ryan tagged me that a member of his Westall page had been looking for information regarding tonight's encounter, as it was her father who had had the experience. And this was very interesting. And she tagged her father into the thread on the UFO Vic page. And I suddenly had the principal witness to this encounter. And I asked her if she thought her father would be interested or willing to share his encounter with me so I could make a video of the incident and perhaps also share it on this podcast, which I'm doing in this week's episode. The daughter asked him, and he said yes. Now, the witness's name is Danny, and indeed, the media dubbed the whole affair as Danny's spaceship, being the fact that he was the first person who initially reported it to the local newspaper. And the daughter was able to provide me with Danny's phone number, and I made a time to call him to discuss what had actually happened. But before we listen to what Danny had to say, I'll provide a summary of what actually happened into a timeline so that you get a feel for how all of these events unfolded. So I'm just going to show some of the press clippings that came out as a result of that. And this is the first one. The Milky spies a spaceship. So a rather sort of a fun type of a headline on the Warwick Nabil Herald on Friday, May 28th, 1971. And it's brief, but it does give the core information about what Danny had seen that morning on his milk run. And as a result of this initial report, a whole lot more came out nearly over the next month. UFO story confirmed. Another UFO sighted. This is all in the Warwick Nabil Herald. 2 more confirmed Danny's spaceship and strange lights in the Wilkes South area. And this sighting map I'm going to put up now basically shows you where some of those reports had come from, at least the ones that I have information for. So Warwick Nabil's in the centre there, and to the north we've a little area called Brim, and to the south we've got Kalalak and Sheep Hills, and we've got Wilkore South over in the top right-hand corner. So some of those names are even hard for me to pronounce, being an Australian. But that's very much a farming district, very flat country out there, big farms, big paddocks, and it's all spread out over a 40 to 50 mile area. So my interest was piqued by this. I thought, this is really interesting. You know, I want to have a look at this. We've got an initial close encounter, and we've also got independent witnesses who back this up. And this is in 1971. So hardly enlightened times back in 1971. And so the events began at 6 a.m. on the 21st. Warwick Nabil. So those of you who are interested in how that's spelt, That's WARRAKNABEAL. That's the name of the town. So, just to give you a little bit more of a feel for what Danny was doing, he was a milkman. And back in those days, they had a horse and a cart. And the horse would run along, and the milkman would be behind, and he would take the bottles of milk off as the horse went along the route, and he would be depositing the bottles, and I believe also picking them up as well. This is back in the day before we had, the cardboard cartons. So that's interesting. Here's another picture. These are not of Danny. These are just sort of representative pictures of what it was like in Australia at that time. Here's another one, which I think is probably in England, but you get the general gist of what he was actually doing. So he was 15 minutes into his morning round when he first heard a sound like a car, and it sounded like it was bogged in the distance. And as he deemed it too far away from where he was, he continued on his round. And about 5 minutes later, a sudden and bright flash in the sky lit up the entire area like daylight for an instant. So this is at 6 o'clock in the morning in fall, late fall. So it's getting dark. It is dark. It's not getting dark. It is dark, and it's still. So when this thing's lit up, it's just lit up the entire area from practically pre-dawn to a really bright light. So it lit up the sky, and this shocked Danny, and he stopped his delivery momentarily to look up at what was going on. And he initially thought that it was lightning, which you would probably expect, but there had been no storm activity at all that morning. And this was completely out of the blue and entirely unexpected. And as he looked up, he could see a large cylindrical cigar-shaped object, and the large object had glowing porthole-style windows on it. And Danny estimated that there was probably about 4 to 6 windows. And when I spoke to him the other day, I did a quick sketch of what I had in my mind as to what he had seen. And this is that image. So it's looked like a cylindrical object, and there's those portholes. And I believe that the color was just like a bright light coming out of it, not of any particular color, but just a bright light coming out of this object. So the object was completely silent, no noise at all. It simply hovered in the one spot in the sky at about 200 feet or 60 meters above the town. So quite low. A tall tree in Australia, a gum tree, is approximately 30 meters high. So it's really no more than 2 tall trees up in the air. So it was not that high in the sky. And it was behind and to the side of Danny, who was by far the closest witness to the object. And that big flash that he described was what a lot of the other witnesses had seen at the same time on the same date. So he's almost at ground zero, practically underneath it. And he was in total awe of the object in the sky. Its portholes were gleaming, and it looked like an incredible piece of machinery that had interrupted his early morning milk run. As quickly as it appeared, it suddenly disappeared in a blink. Danny only got to see it for no more than a maximum from the flash through to the completion of maybe 10 to 15 seconds max, maybe even a little bit less than that. So, yet despite the briefness of that encounter, it was forever etched in his mind. And the fact that he could see structure and portholes, for me, made this an interesting encounter and the close proximity of it. So it is a classic close encounter, something that you would not expect. And there's more to this story too, especially about Danny's horse, whose name was Trixie. But I'll let him explain that to you shortly when I play our pre-recorded interview that I did with him. So Danny went to the local newspaper and explained what had happened, and the editor was skeptical. But nonetheless, ran that brief piece that I showed you before a week later on the 28th. So the news doesn't travel that fast back in 1971. And that piece was titled Milky Spies a Spaceship, appearing in the Warwick-Nabil Herald. Well, once that came out in the paper, they all came forward to say what they had seen. So on the same date, 21st of May 1971, the previous Friday to the paper report, a farmer, Alan Morecambe, saw the object and described it as weird. He was located at Kalalak, which is south of Warwick-Nabil, about 11 kilometres to the south, so a reasonable distance. And at 6 a.m, Alan saw the light hovering over the town of Warwick-Nabil, and he described the object as hovering and then taking off at blinding speed. So he's seeing this at the same time from 11 kilometres further south of where Danny was. And also on the 21st of May 1971, same date, same time, another farmer, Gordon McLean, was located at Brim, which was 26 kilometres north of Warwick-Nabil. He was on his tractor and he saw three lights travelling west to east and coming in at an angle. And Gordon was under the impression that the lights were disintegrating. And he said that they were a long way off to the south, which would make sense because he was north of Warwick-Nabil. But he could see them clearly, and he noted them as something that was not normally there. And Gordon said the light exploded and lit up the entire dawn sky, which probably correlates with what Danny saw. And while the report is slightly different in the fact that he's saying he saw three lights and a light disintegrating, this is all occurring at the same time. And there may have been another object too. That's another possibility, because there's really, other than the newspaper reports, there's really no other information available about this particular incident or incidences. So, and in total, there were 6 reports made on that Friday, the 21st of May 1971. Warwick-Nabil, another place called Agrira, Donald, which is a little bit to the east of Warwick-Nabil, Kalalak to the south, Brim to the north, and also 4 miles north of Horsham was a report, and Horsham's a little bit to the west of Warwick-Nabil. So you can quite conclusively say that the sightings were 40 to 50 miles apart, but there was agreement on the time of the incident and the direction. So that's really, really interesting and great when UFO researchers get this particular type of report as something as more than just simply lights that were high up in the sky. That really does make a bit of a difference. So, and in addition to these reports, some other events occurred not too long after. So on the 27th of May 1971, at Wilcaw South, which was just off to the northeast of Warwick-Nabil, Mrs. Taylor was returning home from a ball, the Bangarang Victorian Young Farmers Ball, which is a dance in Australia, at 1:40 a.m, when she saw what looked like a huge hall lit up, and it was about 3/4 of a mile from her farmhouse, and it looked like a large building at ground level on the rise. That was how she described it. The lights seemed to be very powerful, 3 large bluish-green fluorescent style lights, so I would suggest that's a cool type of colour, but appeared indirect, as if seen from under a veranda when she saw it. So it was either rising or it was sitting in that area. So this is coming home at 1:40 a.m. on the 27th of May, just prior to the article coming out in the paper about the Milky Spies spaceship. And additionally, a carload of young people, also returning from the same dance, saw the object from about 2 miles away on the Watcham-Warwick-Nabil Road. And when they turned down Taylor's Road, which is a little bit further on, the lights had disappeared. So that's interesting. Less than a week later, we have an additional report. And on the 15th of June, 1971, a farmer, Max Golder, So you're not quite a month later, but getting up there. He was cropping again at Brim, which is 26 kilometres north of Warwick-Nabil, when at 6:10 a.m., similar time, same location, he saw a bright white light to the north of his location. And Max said the light changed colour 3 times. It went from green to orange to green over a 5-minute duration. He was about to shift the truck when he first noticed it in the morning. Would have been cold. And he paused and watched it until it disappeared towards the north. Now, his story was also supported by another man called Noel Baker, who was driving along the Warwick-Nabil Minyip Road. And he was passing an area known as Sheep Hills, which was about halfway between the two towns, when he saw a bright light to the northeast of his position. And he was basically southeast of Warwick-Nabil, and Max was north 26 kilometres. And Noel said that the light was bright and changed from green to orange and then back to green again. So one man south of the town and another man north of the town, at quite different distances, one being 11, one being 26, are both reporting this light again above Warwick-Nabil. And Noel said the time and the colours he saw matched Max's report, the farmer. And Noel estimated that the light was about as high as a silo, but a long way off, as it was moving at high speed to the south and just simply disappeared. So very, very strange things happening. So what have we got here? We've got a consistent period when multiple independent witnesses reported seeing the same or similar strange objects appearing in the Warwick-Nabil area. And it was large enough and bright enough to be seen north, south, southeast, northeast, and further afield again, as far away as Donald and Horsham on opposite sides of Warwick-Nabil. And the object must have been big. It must have been bright. It must have been fast, as in appearing and disappearing. Danny the milkman described the object as cylindrical with portholes, and the other reports range from disintegrating lights to large flashing green orange to a big lighted object as big as a community hall lit up. So something appeared in the skies around Warwick-Nabil and the little areas that surround it. And variation in witness descriptions is quite common, and multiple people can see the same event and describe totally different things. And sometimes common themes appear, as we have here in this series of events. But not everything is consistent, which is also quite typical of UFO reports. So what makes Danny's testimony particularly interesting is the fact that he was by far the closest witness to the object, and he was really only metres away from it, both in distance and in height. It was just over the road and about 60 metres up in the air. And all the other witnesses are kilometres away and report lights and flashes. But Danny is the one who was at ground zero, even if it was brief. And it's hard to glean additional information, as I've not been able to talk with any other witnesses at this time when I'm running the podcast. And the newspaper reports are only brief and capture the bare basics of each sighting. There's a lot more information that you could probably get if you could talk to the people involved. And I'm really grateful that the event is presented, that much at least, in the paper, because there would be more to each of these sightings. And without the newspaper, you've got nothing. So that's really interesting. And those other witnesses would perhaps have only spoken to a reporter, maybe family and friends, and they probably kept quiet after that. So very, very interesting. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to play the interview that I recorded with Danny this week. Now it's just a full-length phone call. So it's not edited. It's just what happens in the call. At one point, his phone gets another call coming in, and he's distracted by that for a brief moment, and then he's back on track talking about the object. So it runs for nearly about half an hour or so, and I'll put some images up in between that will also sort of highlight the areas and other things about the case. So just sit tight for a minute while I work the technology and I'll start this recording.
Hello, Danny. Yes, yep.
G'day, it's Ben Hurl from UFO Vic. How you going?
Yeah, g'day, Ben. I'm not bad, mate.
That's good.
This is like a call from the long, long past.
Oh, look, I'm really grateful for you taking the time out to talk to me today. I really am.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's at that incident that you were involved in got a fair bit of press at the time.
It did. It started off pretty low-key because the editor of the Warwickville Herald at that time, his name was Ray Jolly.
Yep.
And he never had a lot of time for us young blokes in town. We were good kids. We weren't ever in trouble or anything, but we played footy and sport. But I think he's a guy who come back from the war and he never had a lot of empathy for younger people. I remember going in and telling him, and he was, he probably thought, oh, Danny's pissed again and doesn't know what he's talking about. I certainly wasn't pissed.
No, how old were you at that time?
45. I was born in 45, so 1965. I was 20. When did it happen? Bloody 67, 68, 69, whenever it was.
Well, the date that I've got is Friday, the May 21st, 1971.
Yeah, righto. So let's work that out. 1965, I was 20, so I was 26, yeah.
Yeah.
I was married with 3 young kids then, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And you were, well, maybe just sort of go through exactly what happened, because I understand from reading the newspaper clippings that you were a milkman on your delivery round.
Yeah, so I would get out, I'd have to be at the dairy at 5 a.m.
Yep.
I used to work 12 days on and 2 days off, and I just quickly got into that job accidentally because I was an A-grade electrician.
Yep.
Well, I was then, I was then. And I was working for a boss, Les Farnsworth or Trevor Rodder, one of them. And one of my mates who I played footy with hurt his leg.
Yep.
And he was the milkie. And he asked if I could come in the car with him, do the running, and he'd tell me what to do. So that went on. It was supposed to be for 2 days. Went on for a week, and it turned out that he'd actually broken his leg, and he just couldn't work for 6 months. So Don Madeley, the manager at the dairy, said, Jesus, Danny, we're stuck. Can you do it? And I said, no, I can't do it. I've already got 2 jobs. Anyway, I said, I'll help you out for a week or 2. Well, 12 years later,
yeah.
Anyway, that particular morning, I drive my car up to the dairy, pitch black, no bloody outside lights or anything. Hey, look, they'll just have to wait. Somebody's just trying to ring me. I forgot I had to be up at Bueller to price a deceased estate, but they'll ring me back again.
Yeah.
So anyway, got to work, lit the gas lamp, walked over and hung it into the stable, went and caught Trixie, saddled her up in the harness, put her in the car, come round the bit, drove her over to the dairy, and then loaded up 800 to 1,000 bottles of milk.
Yep.
And then off I went. So from where I started, at the top end of Anderson Street, that was the street where I saw the UFO.
Yep.
I was about 15 minutes approximately into my run.
Oh, so not long.
Not long. And it was pitch black. I just had the gas lamp hanging on the back of the car.
Yep.
And I had a 2-battery torch in my back pocket if I needed it.
Yep.
Anyway, we're trotting along, and I ran over to deliver Jimmy Lardner's milk, and then run next door along the footpath to John Brennan's. They both got 2 bottles each.
Yeah.
I had the hand crate which carried 8 bottles, and I ran over and delivered Timmy's, and I put 2 full bottles in, took the 2 empties out and put them in. I started to turn to run to Brennan's, and all of a sudden, spectacular light like I've never seen it before. The whole world just lit up like every inch of it, everywhere as far as the eye could see.
Wow.
Was pure bright. And of course, you don't have much time to think. I turned and looked back behind me because I couldn't see anything in front of me. When I turned back across the road, now I reckon I was pretty close to it compared to others.
Yeah.
Because back behind the milk cart, right across the road, but how high it was, I wouldn't have a clue.
Yeah.
But there was this big round thing, which I described it, cylindrical looking thing with portholes along the side.
Yeah.
And I'll clarify about that a bit more later on. And I looked at it, and my hair just stood on end. I just couldn't believe what you don't even have time to think. 1 second it was there. I probably looked at it for a matter of just a few seconds, and then everything went black.
Right.
There was absolutely no sound. No sound whatsoever. Not a single bit of sound, no wind, no nothing. Was there 1 minute, I looked up at it, and then it was gone. And
Wow.
the funny thing was, I ran back to the back of the horse and cart, and she had stopped. Trixie never stopped there. There were only a few spots in the round where she knew she had to stop, and she just come to a standstill.
Wow.
So I put the milk crate, my hand crate, back into the back of the car, and I suppose I just from memory just stood there looking up and around me. What the hell happened there? And then I thought, well, I've got to keep going. So I said, get up, girl, get up. And she wouldn't move. So I walked around the right-hand side of the car and put my hand on her neck and said, come on, Trixie, come on, girl. And she wouldn't move. And then I noticed when I patted her neck, she sort of come out in a lather. Now, she would never have that lather till the end of the round, 3 hours later. So I then grabbed her bridle and pulled her forward, talked to her nicely, patted her face and said, come on, girl, come on. And she moved.
Wow.
And then I just continued the round, went up and down a couple of streets over the Dimmy Road Bridge, started to do Craig Avenue, and Jackie Conduit, who drove the big gravel truck of the Shire, he said, come on, Danny, where the bloody hell are you been? You're about 5 minutes late. And I said, I just saw a flying saucer. No, I think I said I just saw a UFO. And he said, you've been drinking it again, Danny. Give me my bloody milk. And he just brushed it off.
Oh, no.
So I did the round, went home, told the wife and kids, what can you do?
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I'm going to go tell the newspaper. So I went and told the editor. And the next day on the front page of the paper, just a little single column, I think it said something like, Milky Spy Spaceship. Just a few words about it, not very much.
Yep.
That had happened, I think, on a Monday, I think. And then on the Tuesday, because our Herald comes out Tuesday and Friday twice a week and still does.
Yep.
And on the Friday's paper, when I got home from work, my wife said, hey, Danny, come and have a look at this. And headlines, Danny's spaceship confirmed. Okay, so this is the thing that bamboozled me. Alan Morecambe he's back about towards Horsham, in miles, 7 or 8 miles towards Horsham, ploughing his paddock with a tractor.
Yep.
He confirmed it.
Yeah.
Murray Anderson, who lived in Warwick-Nabil, most toilets in those days were outdoor toilets, and
Yep.
he'd gone out for a twinkle,
Mm.
and he confirmed it. And a guy by the name of Baldock, he drove the frozen food truck, and he was going over the railway line at Litchfield, and he saw it.
Amazing.
So they were the first ones to sort of confirm it. Then it grew after that.
Mm.
But a few funny things happened. I built and ran a restaurant. It's still here, out where I live now, Warwick-Nabil, called Danny's Rusty Nail Restaurant. And about 10 years ago, Wes Davidson Real Estate, it was called Ian Davidson Real Estate then, now his son's taken it over. They had their break-up in my restaurant from Horsham.
Yep.
And at the end of the night, when Isabel, Ian's wife, come up to pay, there wasn't a lot of people around then. It was getting pretty late. She said, "Oh, Danny, I've got a confession to make." And I said, "Really? What's that?" "Well, you know, when you saw that flying saucer all those years ago, 30, 40 years ago," I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, we'd been to a party, an all-night party in Horsham. We're coming back to Warwick-Nabil, and we pulled up just past Sailors' Home Hall on the Blue Ribbon Road. Ian wanted to do a pee, and he got out to do a pee, and next thing the whole world was just lit up, pure bright. Now, the time with all of these sightings was exactly the same.
Mm.
They all described a similar thing, but I'll just jump forward. I know I'm talking a lot, but years and years later, we had a hairdresser here called Digger Winsell.
Mm.
And I was sitting in Digger Winsell's waiting to get my hair cut, and he had a whole heap of Post magazines. Post and Pics were magazines that you used to get years ago. They don't print them anymore.
Yep.
And I was looking through a Post magazine, and I opened it up, and I couldn't believe my bloody eyes. This guy in Queensland saw what I saw, but at a different time, and he described it perfectly.
Mm.
He said it was cigar-shaped,
Yep.
with portholes all down the side. And I thought, oh my God, that's what it was. It was cigar-shaped.
Mm. Mm.
And that was an amazing thing to sort of read years and years later.
Mm.
But I've had, you know, lots of skeptics, but because so many people confirmed it, more confirmed what I just said over the next few weeks.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing thing. I mean, it was, you know, it was only for a matter of seconds that I saw this thing. It was real. There's absolutely no doubt it was real. What makes me even more convinced is what my horse did. You know, the horse, see, the horse wears blinkers, so it wouldn't have seen it, but it sensed something. You know what I mean? It must have sensed something, because the horse was past it. It was back behind the horse.
Yep.
But anyway, that was my experience. I had a lot of people ring me up and talk to me and God knows what, but it was an amazing thing. I saw it, and it'll always be there. I definitely saw the thing. It was real.
Yes.
The thing that intrigued me was two things: was that it was silent, and the bright. How it could be that bright or illuminate that much brightness? I don't know.
Yeah.
How?
Yeah. Was it like daylight when it lit up? Or was it like lightning?
It was just all of a sudden. It was if somebody turned the light on. Yeah. But it was really bright. Yeah. You know, it was so bright. You got, what the hell is happening here? I mean, it was winter time. Maybe for a second I thought it was lightning, but I knew it couldn't have been lightning. It wasn't possible that it could, there's no thunder and anything like that. And it was brighter than the brightest you could ever imagine. It was just so bright.
Yeah.
It didn't dazzle me or anything, but things were just totally illuminated. You could see everything. And then it was just like somebody turned the light out and it was pitch bloody dark. You couldn't see a thing except for the gas light in the back of my horse and cart.
And did she like stop or rear, or did she do anything like that at all? She just stopped still. Yep.
Yeah, she stopped still. So just to fill you in there, we're going down Anderson Street. It's a pretty long street.
Yeah.
And she does not stop. When she gets to the corner, she turns left.
Yeah.
She will always stop if I say, woo girl.
Yeah.
She'll just stop. But in that case, I'm going from side to side, side to side. I keep up with that horse. She's just walking.
Yeah.
And she just stopped.
Wow. Just stopped, cold stop. Bang.
Yeah, she just stopped, and she never stops there.
Wow, it's amazing, and to see that she had a physical reaction to it through all her, like she was foaming up.
Yeah, and she had blinkers on.
Yeah.
She can only see in front of her, and this thing was behind the cart.
Yeah.
Right across the road behind me.
Yeah.
And it was there for 2 or 3 seconds, Well, it didn't stay there 10 seconds. It was, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 3 or 4 seconds.
Yeah.
But it definitely had portholes along the side. That was the distinguishing factor with the thing.
Yep.
It had these sort of round, you could only describe them as portholes.
And were they illuminated they were illuminated with a yellow light, or what sort of light were they?
Honest to God, now I can't remember.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Yeah, or how many portholes? Like 2, 3, 4?
I think I could only see 3 or 4.
Yep.
3 or 4 or maybe 5. There could have been 6, but from memory I just looked up and saw this thing and I saw maybe 4.
Yep, in a cigar shape.
Yeah, well, that's not my description at the time, but it was what I read in the Post magazine, and I thought, oh my God, that's what it is, sort of like a big sausage or a saveloy or a hot dog, sort of like that.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. But whether I could really see the front and the back of it, I don't know.
Yeah.
Whether I could see the front and the back of it. Everybody described the same thing from the same position many, many miles apart.
Yes. Yep.
So I can't figure out my head. They all saw it at exactly the same time.
Yep.
But isn't it funny that some people did not come forward because they were scared of being laughed at, perhaps?
Oh, absolutely. And it sounds like, like I've read in the paper, there's at least 6 other people that the paper talks about seeing it, but there must have even been more than that.
Yeah. Well, I only know of that one couple.
Yeah.
Her husband never spoke to me that night, just the wife came up and said, Danny, I've got an apology to make to you. Ian would not let me confirm it because the ridicule was the word she used, because we might see, here's the real estate agent.
Yeah.
And he probably thought that people had ridiculed him, but that never entered my head for 1 second. I just wanted to tell everyone about it.
Yeah, that's how you felt.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing that, I haven't got them today, but at various times, as short as a year ago, I think with my family and other friends, my hairs on my arm will still stand up.
When you talk about it.
Yeah. Perhaps if you were here with me, I'd get more of a sense of that closeness, but because we're on the phone, I think it's the first time I've talked about it that the hairs on my arms haven't stood up. And, I'd go for a lie detector test, hypnosis. I've never embellished the story.
Yeah.
There's not much I can say except what I said to you.
Yeah.
It is true. It really did happen all those years, 50 years ago.
Yeah, 51, yeah.
So you get ahead of the technology.
Yes.
I think about it, the technology that this thing could be there and go without making a sound.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Without making a sound.
Yeah. Now the paper said it was about 200 feet up in the air or 60 metres. Now a tall tree is about 30 metres.
Yeah, look, I could, it wasn't that high,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah.
It seemed to be, quite low
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
I would, look, 50, 60 metres perhaps.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I talked about how high it was at the time. I probably did.
Yeah.
But it wasn't high up. It was low. It was low down.
Yeah. Yeah. And what relative angle to you, like 45 degrees or 90 degrees?
It was sitting perfectly horizontal across the road. It was flat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was just sitting there as if it was sitting on your kitchen table.
Yeah, okay, yep. So it wasn't up
or down, it was horizontal, straight across the road behind me when I looked back. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. And did it take off or disappear? That's something I want to clarify.
It disappeared. It never went forward or back. It just went black.
It just outright just disappeared. No, you didn't see it zoom off.
It was if somebody turned the lights out on it.
Yeah.
And it could have still been there. I don't know, but I had no. I never shone my torch up or anything. I just wanted to get going.
Yeah.
My old 2-battery torch wouldn't have went far anyway.
Yeah.
But it was there 1 minute, 1 second, and gone the next sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's an absolutely incredible experience, and you only did that for. So did you go out again the following day?
Oh shit,
yeah. Yeah. And you did.
See, it was a Monday. Had I been lucky enough to get the next weekend off, I would have worked till the Friday morning, got Saturday, Sunday off. But most of the time, the guy who relieved me never turned up for work, and the boss would come and get me out of bloody bed. I used to hate that.
Yeah.
You finally get a weekend off, as you can imagine, getting up at 4 o'clock every morning, and the guy who relieves you doesn't turn up.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was at work the next day, and then, of course, I was playing footy then, and you copped it at the footy club. It was people laughed at you, and Danny was pissed again. But once it got confirmed, people asked me about it instead of making jokes about it.
Yeah, they took it a bit more seriously.
Yeah, took it a bit more seriously.
Did the Air Force talk to you, or the police, or anyone like that? Any officials at all?
No.
Yeah.
Nobody come near me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, I had, I think somebody from another local newspaper asked me about it. I had a few phone calls from people, but there was no one who said they were from the UFO.
Yeah. Yeah. From any of the groups at that time.
There were groups at that time, for sure.
Yeah. It was Viewforce back then, Yeah. Oh, wow.
But look, I'm always interested when I read about this phenomena in the paper about various things that have happened in different parts of the world.
Yeah.
I'm not a skeptic. I can tell you that. I'm not a skeptic. I definitely believe that, you're going to get the odd nutter who's going to tell bullshit.
Yeah.
But, as I said at the time, people knew I was telling the truth, but I don't have to confirm it because I'll let the other people confirm it for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're all good, respectable people, all of them.
Yes, there was farmers in different areas around the place that had also seen it at the same time.
Yeah.
Another lady returning from a ball had seen it as well.
Yeah.
And a guy called Gordon McLean in Brim, which I think is a few miles away.
Yes.
So yeah, Max, a guy called Max Calder.
Maxi Golder.
Yeah, Maxi Golder. Yeah, he'd seen it as well. So that's quite a really interesting point. That like a lot of these sightings, it's like one person or maybe a couple of people, but this is like all people in all different locations seeing it around the district.
Yeah. What got me was the guy, I think his name was Ken Baldock, and we had a frozen food. It wasn't a factory, it was a storage centre in Warwicknabeal.
Yeah.
I'd bring the gear there from Ballarat, and then it got distributed from Warwicknabeal.
Yeah.
And he was going to Donaldson Arnott in the frozen food truck. He said he was going across the line at Litchfield, which is 25 minutes to the east of Warwicknabeal.
Yeah.
And he saw it there.
Yeah.
And Brim's 12 miles to the north, Killallick, that's called McLean, Killallick, Alan Morcombe, that's 7 or 9 miles out here to the south.
Yeah.
Maxi Gold is out to the west.
Yeah.
There was and plus a couple more sightings in Warwicknabeal. So how I can't figure out, they all describe the same thing, the same time.
Yeah.
So was it bright enough to light up a 50-kilometre radius, or these are things that I've thought about afterwards.
Yeah. And it sounds like you were actually the closest. You were at ground zero, and everybody else is sort of miles away. But it all stacks up.
And things. I was on my 2 feet, looking straight up at it.
Yeah. So I'll just pull it up there at that point in time, and I hope you found that an interesting interview that I conducted with Danny, and he really does talk about it in a very open way, and I think it's quite engaging to hear him talk about that, and that's like the first time he's spoken about that to anyone really outside of family and friends at that time. So just a quick run through of some of those locations. So that was the milk depot where he left from. And this is the street that he was going down, which I was circulating some of these pictures. And as you can see, it's a flat, wide country town. And this is where I estimated the location to be where he actually had that encounter. And this is the map of the route. So from the top there near where it says Wheatland's Warehouse, he set off from there and travelled along and turned left down Anderson Street, about 15 minutes into his run. So that was where he actually went. This is what I said was roughly where I thought could have been the area. Certainly would have been lit up, that's for sure. And he went over the Dimmy Street Bridge, which is local slang because it's for Dimboola, which is further down the road. And he went over there, and then he turned up into Craig Street here. And this is where his friend spoke to him about being late delivering the milk. And these other pictures just briefly show the other areas. So this is Brim, which is the 26 to the north, Callalack, which was 11 to the south, Sheep Hills, similar sort of a distance, and the Wilcore South area out to the northeast of that area. So it was a really, really very, very widespread encounter. So thank you so much for joining me again and helping me to explore this really interesting case that sort of appeared from nowhere for me in many ways. And I just want to thank Danny so much for being able to give me the time to talk about what he had experienced. And I'm sure now he actually invited me over there, but it's on the opposite side of the state to where I am. So I'm not sure if I'll get over there anytime soon. But that is all in the context of that area, that entire area over there. It's been a very, very rich area for UFO activity. And I'm very, very sure that in future episodes that I'll have some more great reports out of that district to recount to you as I dig through all my files and old newspaper clippings that I've got here. So thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Unexplained Phenomena Australia. And I really look forward to seeing you again next week when we will come up with another fantastic episode for you. What that is, I'm not 100% sure at this stage, but it definitely will be something worth tuning in for. I'll see you then.